Alright. Turn that off. Pet the kitty. Yeah, hi Neo. Okay. Alright, let's see here. Okay, we'll fast travel to the atrium. Oh, hey. Okay. Alright, let's check the map. Okay, we're going the right way. So, just moving slow, slowly making our way through this game. We're still kind of technically in the tutorial of sorts. We're in that awkward JRPG place of have your first vehicle exit learning the game, but you don't have any party members yet. Alright. But as I recall, once you get your first set of party members, it picks up really fast. So last streaming session, I talked a little bit about the history of these games. There's not a whole lot more to add to that. You know, it's a good series, but it's a pretty small scale series. In the grand scheme of things, it's not. I won't say it's not important. I think it had an effect on dystopic Japanese fiction. But you know, here its impact is next to nothing, really. Let me do look forward to streaming the other games in this series. Hopefully there are some new games in our future. Because I absolutely believe there would be room for a game like this, like alongside the Tales of series. Maybe not Trails of. That's a real good series. Switch to Falcon. Oops. Nice. Okay. Right, around here somewhere should be... There it is. Nice. Alright. I'm getting real distracted by actually playing the game because at this juncture is when the game 100% a weakness on the part of this game, by the way. But like at this point is when the game really starts to get fun. You know, you're picking stuff off as it gets in your way. Maybe not everything, like I'm avoiding these guys right here, because I don't... That's a lot of a fight for riding solo, and my shield points haven't healed yet. Been playing too much on my Xbox. I keep thinking that's the right way to shoot things, and it is not. So anyways, last week I talked a little bit about my personal history with this game series. This week I figured I'd talk a little bit about my fascination with tanks. After this cutscene. Alright. So... Ooh, I remember this. We're gonna farm some shield points quick before we go in there. That's just prudent. So tanks. Tanks kind of... My interest in tanks was kind of in parallel to my interest in this game. Because other than the singular tank on the video, or on the poster for the Famicom version of Metal Max, I didn't really know that this game was about tanks. I was assuming it was more like a car combat kind of game. You know, swinging back around to like the descriptor. I'm kind of like, oh, you know what? I wonder if I can fast travel. I can indeed. So let's just go back to the Iron Base. That's fine. So I very much kind of thought that I guess I don't anymore. It's kind of hard for me to tell what I even thought. Coolly. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Because I barely knew anything about that game, this series at the time. But again, we'll pick up after this cutscene. Well, we'll see if we can. Oh, we're wrecking this guy. Alright. Crits in. It looks like we had actually killed this guy. There we go. There's the kill. Now I gotta pop back over and test my sound levels on Twitch, because I thought I had muted myself, but of course I live in constant fear. There we go. There we go. Okay.
つけたの？あの缶、この雲の人、すごくすごい助けてくれて。
やっとでかしたぞ。そうなの？いつもより多め。
生存者はかなり衰弱している。
Yeah, we'll save. Anyways, tanks. We'll start a new save for that. I don't even 100% know where my fascination with tanks started. I know it was young. I remember being pretty little, 9, maybe 10.
なぜこのトニーはアイアンタウンで商売してたトレーダーの娘でね。
わしもあと20歳若かったら死んぞ。しかしヨッキーのやつめ、いつの間にきっちり色気づいて。
Maybe even younger than that. I don't remember. There used to be a craft store in the town I grew up in that sold models. Lots of kinds of models. And little, I don't want to call them RC cars, but like, or not, no, don't want to call them Matchbox cars, but like, what would you call it? Yeah, they're just little die-cast tank toys with like plastic treads and like rubber, like plastic tread walls and like rubberized treads. And I remember buying a lot of them. Mostly, there was a healthy mix of like the more popular stuff. We're talking like generic Shermans and generic Shermans like M60s, an M60. I distinctly remember having a T-34, but like undistinct to the point where you can't really identify. Okay, is an early war model or late war model, and a T-60, just as a little toy. I had as many of them as like I had series. I'm like 90% sure I never completed one of those sets, but I had them, and I enjoyed playing with them. And when I got older, and I'm sure in the series, Zoid model kits will come up, but not today. And Zoids were my primary passion when it came to the actual model kits from Ben Franklin, but those are few and far between, and oftentimes if I couldn't get one of those, I would try and talk my mom into letting me get one of the tanks. They often did not turn out well. I was not often patient enough to, clip the piece off the sprue and trim it. Which unfortunately often meant that those pieces didn't fit quite right. But, you know, the wheels and treads moved enough anyway. And
そうなの？まあでもなぜってバカみたいに酒飲むのはやめたんだ。もう一生分飲んだ。これからはシャンとして、だからオイラも連れて。勝手にしろ。
alright, there's the first party member. Alright, so let's kit out his tank, because it has nothing. Put a Gigaball on it. Put... Oh, that's right. Okay, well... I'm sure we'll come up with something. You can drive bunker. Alright. So, and for a long time, that was kind of the extent of, you know, my interest in tanks, or at least that was as much as there could be for a long time. Where's this jerk? Equip team. No. Hold on. Oh, that's right. They don't follow you around in this one. That's fine. It wasn't until... Okay, so this is an important part of it. I struggled to read for a long time. Eventually, it was discovered that part of my issue was I needed glasses, and that just wasn't quite figured out by the powers that be at the time. Oh, I did not mean to do that. Let's escape. Good talk. Well, that's it for that fight. Alrighty. Well, that sucked. Okay, so we're just gonna travel to the Iron Base. We're gonna fast travel, try that again. So anyways, I couldn't read. Not very well, anyways. And it took me a long time to get to the point where, like a lot of people my age, took probably until it was the fourth Harry Potter book. It was the first, like, kids book I had seen with, like, really gorgeous art cover, and, you know, it looked like a tome, right? So I spent a lot of time reading those, catching up to the series, and then after that, this all ties in, I promise. After that, I got really into Redwall, and then caught up on that. But after all of those, I got into it's this series. I want to say they came out throughout the 80s and 90s, and they reprint them now under, like, Green Label Press or some such thing. I've got a couple on the shelf. Well, let me go check. Because I have versions of the books I read. Let's see here. I'm right here on the... They're called Stackpool Books. And the first one I read was about D-Day. Just a bunch of short story vignettes from different points of view in the, like, hour to hour about D-Day. I had family who served in World War II. And you know, it's one thing to hear the secondhand stories, right? And it's a whole nother to actually be told them. And I devoured those books. They were difficult reading. I distinctly remember that because there was a lot of geography and, you know, complicated things I didn't understand, like different weapon types and such. And I would come to learn about a lot of that. But, I devoured that book. I did. And, you know, went looking for more. Obviously, very dry, long-form history novels like that wouldn't be obtainable, not really obtainable through my school library. That's really... That, in conjunction with my fascination with the online game RuneScape, but an inability to play it at home due to lack of internet, really pushed me towards going to the public library. And at the public library, I got all kinds of history books. You know, everything ranging from really dry tomes, like the Stockpool book I had read, all the way to you know, more narrative-driven stuff like Soldier X.
なんかちょっと筋肉ついたんじゃね？
Even going back as far as like the Red Badge of Courage. I think, pretty sure it's one point I even checked out like the novelization of Saving Private Ryan, which actually turned out to be pretty good, for what that's worth, in case you ever come across it. But the big one that struck with me, and I want to get this title right, was called Storm of Steel. Right? Storm of Steel. Yeah, it was called Storm of Steel. It's a memoir of I believe a German writer, German or Austrian. It described trench warfare in a, like, at that time, I was probably, what up, Baker? I was probably too young to be reading World War I fiction. Maybe 15, 16 at this point. But it's a beautiful book. Beautiful in its pain, by my estimation. I'm always afraid to actually go back and read it, because I'm like, oh, what if it doesn't hold up? What if I actually hate this now? You know, 10,000 books later. But as I recall, now I guess I don't remember if this was it. I always assumed it was, but thinking about it, I'm sitting here questioning myself whether that was the book that so vividly describes World War I tanks or not. It could have been. Either way, the important. I should have done more research on this. I wasn't really planning on this this line of chatting, but here we are. Either way, I became fascinated with the M1, the 1920, the original M1 and M1 Star tanks. Big, laborious land yachts that, would go like 4 or 5 miles an hour, had crews of like 18 to 20 people, were miserably hot and miserably dangerous, largely ineffectual outside of just largely ineffectual in general, prone to breaking down, but like that pushed me in the next tier of fascination about tanks. And from there, I would just, I had a library card, and by God, I was using it. I was checking out anything and everything I could find on tanks. And at the time, there wasn't a whole lot. At least, not that was remotely easy to get your hands on. Later, I think 2018 was when Spear Point was written. Okay, back up. Part of why there wasn't a lot to be found... I'm getting distracted. I could talk about why there isn't a lot of American written texts on tank warfare. But just for this context, in case you don't know, it's because of how we used tanks versus how Germany and Russia used tanks. Tanks were an infantry supporting vehicle for the United States in World War II. Very rarely, if ever, were they applied to tank on tank. That was a rare thing. It almost, it was never part of the plan. Not until the Persian showed up, and even then, like, it was like, well, you can, but we don't recommend it. So, like, most of what we know of tank versus tank combat comes from Russia versus Germany in World War II of that time. And, the United States wasn't big on Russian literature, surprise, surprise, post-World War II until, like, the 2000s. And even then, you can look at the movies at the time, we still weren't real big on Russians. They're not our favorite. For justifiable reason, or, I think justifiable reasons, but you know what? There's more than just me in the world. So, I want to say it was Spear Point, when that book came out, was really, really when you got to see more in-depth looks at it. Anyways, the real, I guess the last major, like, biggest turning point was World of Tanks. Kind of. It's a combination of World of Tanks, I guess, and Girls und Panzer. But Girls und Panzer is an anime that is largely inspired by World of Tanks. So, chicken egg situation, I guess. I didn't have a gaming computer that could handle World of Tanks until it came to console. Though I did have a poor Dell laptop I would abuse into it in the early mornings when the servers were not so pressured that I could actually get a game or two in. But yeah, between World of Tanks and Girls und Panzer, I just really sank into the subject. Nope, we're ignoring those ones, because Dum Dum is only level 11. And I just I've always been fascinated by them. They're I grew up around tractors, I grew up around big equipment. I find out later that, like, one of my grandma's cousins was a tank mechanic in World War II, and that's why, like, she knew some stuff about it. And 100% sure it drove my parents nuts, because while other children were talking about Part of this is because we're talking like early 2000s. Early 2000s-ish, late 90s. So like, while other kids were talking about their first instances of, you know, sports balls and even NASCAR, like NASCAR was really big in the town I grew up in for a brief period. You know, it seemed like everybody I grew up with who wasn't a little more well-to-do or didn't want to present as, or wasn't presenting as a little more well-to-do was super into NASCAR or super into wrestling. And here I was, you know, from 10 to 16, preferring to sit in the corner and read my dry history books and, you know, definitely not be cool. You know, sit and read my is either dry history books or Dungeons and Dragons manuals, and I don't or not manuals, but you know, either Forgotten Realms or actually like players' handbooks and whatnot. And neither of my parents would tell me now for fear of hurting my feelings, but I'd always be curious to know which one alarmed them more, because they didn't know anything about any of that stuff. I was a crash course and a half. But yeah, I mean, clearly to this day, tanks fascinate me. I will, like, if I'm not in a hurry driving somewhere and I see a park with a tank, I will still, like, stop and, like, look at it and see what kind of tank it was and see if I can see any information about, like, you know, was it used 90% of the time in Wisconsin, the state that I live in. When they have a tank in a park, it's an M60. But, you know, there's different variants of the M60, and sometimes that in and of itself is pretty neat. But anyways. Oh, you know what though? Going back to Girls und Panzer, like, man, that was such a wild anime series. I adore it. I adore every step of it. But, like, all things considered, the actual episodic series is okay. It's a standard high school sports anime. It just so happens that the sport in this case is tankery or senchido or essentially high school girls get in tanks and fight each other, but like they hand wave away the fact that it's super dangerous. It's like, nope, these are all you know, optimized for safety. And like, I want to say the first I was still living at home when I bought it. So, fast forward to college, right? The series had actually been out for a few years before I got my hands on it.
分かってるよ。
So, and I think I may even still have the DVD up here. So,
このゾーンに出現すると思われる。送信した情報は全
俺はお前らを倒す。
負ける気しなかったよ。
this would have been like 2012, 2013. It was kind of this phenomenal golden age, actually. Like, for me, anyways. Yeah, there were hard things for me to always, like, think about and do. You know, you don't grow up poor and not have that, right? But,
俺はお前らを倒す。
oh, okay, these guys are for real.
よし、先を急ごう。
いい感じ。
But like, it was probably the least complicated time in my life. Oh, yeah, that 2010 to like even 2011, I guess, because I was working a late night delivery job. Pretty simple, near school. Okay, here it is.
行くぞ。
So I was working a late night delivery job, and it was Melio subs, and like at the time, I didn't really realize it, but I was working with people that would go on to be some of the best friends of my life. In addition to making like really good cash money, I was getting 40 hours a week, basically across 4 days. So like Thursday night, I would work 3 to 3, but oftentimes it was more than 3 to 3. Saturday night I would work 3 to 3. But again, oftentimes a little bit more than that. And then I would pick up like probably at least one 8-hour shift. Doesn't matter. This part doesn't matter. None of this. There's plenty of time to talk about this stuff later. Anyways, I was in a position in my working adult life where the actual money I was taking home from my paycheck was essentially paying all of my bills. And then I was making anywhere from $100 to $500 in tips. That was just fun money. I could do whatever I wanted with it. And this was also when we had 24-hour Walmart. So, like, I was in a college town, 24-hour Walmart. I bought a lot of, like, weird Walmart shit. And one of those things was the complete series on DVD of Girls in Panther. And I know I bought it on a Saturday because I took it home because I basically didn't have to work until that next Thursday. And that first, I went home, I watched like the first 2-3 episodes, passed out. Yeah, surprise, surprise, needing to be awake for 18 hours was a bit much, even for me. So I rolled out of bed, at whatever time the next day. I never, kept track of the time I got out of bed, unless it was the day I had to go to work. And pulled out my laptop, set up. I was probably playing Dark Souls again at the time. I was in a bit of a obsessive, depressive state, so it was just like, nope, we're gonna replay our classics, and threw it on my phone, or threw it on my laptop. And right around I'd say a third of my way through that series, I turned off my PlayStation. Like, I turned off my PlayStation and just threw the anime on it. Because, like, I had caught a couple of things out of the corner of my ear, and like, oh, that history's pretty good, actually. You know, this is, you know, those tanks look really nice, even though the voice acting was only kind of okay, and, you know, the story was very simplistic. Okay, cool. You know, oh, we're getting to my time break here. And I basically, from that Saturday night to the next Thursday when I worked, I watched it 3 times. Because the story, even though the story was kind of simplistic, and even though the voice acting was kind of, you know, kind of simple, I thought it was great. You know, you got to see all these cool tanks that, like, never showed up in movies. You know, the T-38, at the time, the Stug 3, the STG 3 wasn't a thing, you know, it wasn't a tank that really showed up and stuff. It wasn't until Bovington Tank Museum, like, I believe it wasn't until Bovington Tank Museum restored theirs that it really started showing up in movies and whatnot. But yeah, it wasn't until it was just it hit. You know, it reminded me of being a kid and devouring these books on history, because like the last time I went down that rabbit hole, you know, stumbled on that hyperfixation, the internet was hard to use. Like my best access to the internet at that point was God, I don't even probably on my PSP, honestly. Okay, give me 1 second to switch my recording over.